Welcome to Favor and Beauty, the podcast, where we acknowledge beauty that turns heads, but we really dive deep into beauty that turns hearts. And I am your host, Jenaé. Very excited to be here for episode 2. Thank you for joining me. So let's get right into it. So as you saw before we get into the actual episode, let's do a quick recap of episode 1, which was our premiere episode. Still can't even believe that it's recorded, but it is. And we talked about putting your life on Do Not Disturb and the beauty of intentional isolation. And really, I just talked through my experience over the past year and a half or so, where I really just kind of went off the grid and why I did that, how my life benefited from the isolation. And then I also ended with a challenge or a charge for listeners to really do an assessment or an inventory of your life and see how you may be able to pull back in some ways and take some intentional time for yourself. So if you have not listened to the episode, I encourage you to do so. It really was a good one. And something that I would like to add, and I said it in so many words during the episode, but I just want to be just very succinct and matter of fact about this, what I'm about to say. So being busy is not a badge of honor. I don't know who needs to hear it, but I know that I'm not the only one that, really looked at being busy and overworked and overwhelmed and always having something to do as a positive thing. It's really not and I won't say in every person's life, because obviously we are all different. We have different things going on, but like if you're overwhelmed most of the time, busy is probably not one of those things that is a positive in your life. So again, just take a look at your life and see how you may be able to pull back and spend some intentional time by yourself. All right. And just some general announcements. You got to subscribe. You got to subscribe to, if you listen to audio formats of podcasts, the Spotify's, the Apple Podcasts, all of those things, please go to those platforms and subscribe. And if you feel so inclined to leave a 5-star review, please do that. And just share your feedback. And then you can also watch in video format on YouTube. I will leave links so that you can find me, because it's a new channel. But on YouTube, the name of the game is to like and comment and, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel so that other people can discover the podcast just like you did. And thank you in advance for the support and helping other people find the content and experience what you're experiencing right now. Let's get into the episode, y'all. All right. So as you saw in the title, today we're going to talk about forgiveness. Dun, dun, dun. So forgiveness is a heavy topic. But I really wanted it to be the topic of one of the very first episodes, because I believe that forgiveness is like the foundation to healing. It really does kind of it lays the foundation for other areas of your life to be healed. So I really wanted to address this topic today. So let's get into the very first segment, which is called Beauty is Their Name. So in this segment, we celebrate and we acknowledge someone who is showing up beautifully in their life. So they could be displaying some type of behavior. They may have done done some program or whatever. It's they're showing up beautifully in the world and they deserve to be acknowledged. I may know the person, I may not know the person. In this case, I do not know this person, but I'm subscribed to their YouTube channel, and her name is Sandra Lawton. She is a photographer, which was one of the things that I thought was cool because I'm also a photographer. So that was a connection that we had. She does lifestyle content, beauty content, faith-based content. But one of the things that I find most beautiful about her is how out loud she is about her faith. And I'm not sure how old she is, but I want to say probably early mid 20s. But it's no question that she loves God and she is trying to live her life in that way. And so I know how hard that can be at that age or being younger, because the world tells you, you should be outside and doing all of the things. And she has centered her life around God. So I think that's cool. So also, she is very vulnerable in terms of like what she shares online. And so this is a characteristic, or is really a gift, honestly, that I really admire in other people, because that's an area in my life where I've been trying to work on and work through. And so it's one thing to be vulnerable and show up vulnerably in your personal life, but she's also doing it online and sharing it with the world. And I do think that it's really beautiful to set that example for other people to see, how beneficial it can be and how it can lead to someone else's freedom by you being vulnerable. So shout out to Sandra. If you ever listen to or see this episode, you are celebrated. I will link her YouTube channel in case anybody wants to check out her content. And I'm sure you can find her other social media platforms from her YouTube channel as well. All right, so the second segment is called The Chair. Now, this is the opportunity this is the main event, basically. So if you go to the salon, if you go to the barber shop, if you go to the nail shop, once you get in the chair, that's where the good part happens. You come there you go to the location for a very specific service. When you leave, you feel relieved, you feel good, you feel relaxed, you look good. And depending on the relationship you have with your stylist, you may be more informed, or you may have been able to get something off your chest. So that's how I want you to feel once you leave the chair. So welcome to the chair. And of course, we're talking about forgiveness today. So let's just start off with why is forgiveness important, and why do I want to talk about it today? I kind of started talking about it at the beginning of the episode, but really the purpose of this podcast is to help us all move from healing to wholeness. And in my experience, forgiveness is one of those, like I said before, is really one of those foundational components to healing. Because when you are living in unforgiveness, it's taking up space. It's taking up space in your head. It's taking up space in your heart. And when you really let that stuff go, it gives you room for other types of healing to take place. So, do y'all remember those liquid plumber commercials? The stuff that unclogs your drain. So if you think of like your heart is the pipe, right? And then unforgiveness is like the gunk in the hair and the stuff that clogs up the drain. And then forgiveness is the actual liquid plumber. So, they had the illustration of the pipe, and then when the liquid plumber comes through, it kind of like gets all that gunk through. So then when you run the water, it can just flow through evenly without any problems. That's a good way to think about forgiveness. So what does it mean? What does forgiveness mean? So to me, forgiveness is to let go of feelings of resentment, of anger, of bitterness. Simply put, it's letting go. And if you even want to take a step further, it's like looking at a situation as if it never even happened. So it really, when you forgive someone, it has no residual effects on you at all. That's how I want to forgive in every circumstance. So what does forgiveness not mean? So forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. So just because you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that, we're cool again, or we can go right back to the relationship that we had before, because obviously we have all experienced a situation where it's like, yeah, I can't go back to that. And, we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're being abused or mistreated. And that's really where the boundaries come in. So it doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. It can, but not in every case. And when you think about forgiveness, it's really about you. It has nothing to do with the other person at all. So it's your freedom and setting you free. So that is what forgiveness is not. It doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. So what has forgiveness looked like in my life? So I'm going to use a very specific example. And I'm going to use an example. The example is with my parents. And in my experience, because I was able to let go of resentment or anger or just undesirable feelings towards them, I feel like I can forgive anybody. And I'm going to explain to you why. So if you talk to any therapist or anybody, any counselor, social worker, anybody that is knowledgeable about human behavior and psychology and all of those things, they will tell you that a lot of times who we are as an adult is directly related to who we were as children. And who we were as children is obviously directly related to how we were parented or how we were raised. And for me personally, I blamed my parents for the person that I became because I didn't like that person. So hear me out. So my parents were divorced when I was maybe 4 or 5. And if you've been divorced, and I have now been through a divorce, and so I understand, like, it's a lot. It's a lot of grief that you go through. It's a lot of feelings that you have to process through. And that takes time. And so I totally understand now why they were the way that they were. But a lot of times I felt like, because they had so much going on, like they had to focus on moving and setting up their lives separately, and dealing with their own stuff, and still being a parent, and still working, and still dealing with life in general. That can be a lot. And because as a result of that, a lot of times I felt unseen. I would act out in ways trying to get attention or trying to get someone to listen. But, they just weren't always available. Sometimes I felt abandoned, as a lot of children who go through divorce do, because, you have to live with one parent and then one parent is gone, and it's a lot. And having to deal with those emotions and not being able to really process them, because as a child, you don't have the tools to process those types of complex and heavy emotions on your own. I just kind of shut down. I turned inward and I just stopped talking about my feelings altogether. And then I also kind of, not kind of, I did. I just kind of got more and more and more into the background. And I think I've always been an introvert. I'm just generally a laid back person, but it was like I didn't have a voice at all. And so, everybody assumed that I was quiet or that I was shy or I didn't have a lot to say, when I really did. I just kind of felt like, nobody's going to listen anyway. It's not really important. And so I'm just going to take this place in the background in literally everything I do and in every way possible. And as I got older and I got to know myself a little better, I started, going to therapy and just having more life experiences. I realized I'm like, I don't like this person because I don't feel like this is who I am. I actually do have a lot to say. I actually have a lot to add to most conversations. I do have opinions. I do have thoughts. And I don't always want to be in the background. And I blame my parents for that. I'm like, this is their fault. And it took me a while to come to that realization. And once I finally did, I realized, some of it is unfair because, we're human and no one is perfect. I'm also a parent now, so I realize how difficult parenting can be, especially when you're trying to, maintain daily life, but also take care of yourself and take care of your children. It can be a lot. And, because I turned inward, I think, they didn't even realize what was going on because I couldn't communicate what I was feeling. So they couldn't help me. And at a certain point, it was just like, oh yeah, I shut down. So I'm not sharing anything with y'all. So I realized that I really needed to address the situation and really walk in forgiveness. And so I did. So what did that look like for me? So journaling has been, I remember when I was a little girl, I was probably in elementary school. My mom, she probably noticed that, I wasn't talking a lot about my feelings or whatever. She brought me a notebook and she was just like, here, write what you feel in this notebook. And so I remember journaling throughout my childhood, and I, excuse me, I still do it to this day. And there really is there's a release that happens when you write stuff down, you get it out of your head and you get it out of your heart onto a piece of paper. And, it seems like, it's like, that's not going to help. I'm just writing. But something about that process and just that getting it out somehow is really beneficial. So one of the things that I've done, and not just for my parents, but just for a lot of people in general, I write letters. And literally, it's essentially just journaling because I'm not going to give them the letter, but it's really just me telling them in my way what they did, how they impacted me, how they made me feel, why I didn't like it, and why they shouldn't have done what they did. And it's a journal, so you can be as raw and authentic as you can, but I really just let it out. And that just gave me, again, it was just a way of releasing it out of my head and out of my heart. And it allowed me to really acknowledge and sit with whatever situation happened. And I'm like, this really hurt my feelings, and or this really made me feel this way, and I didn't like it um because I think a lot of times, well, for me, when someone does something wrong, most of the time I would go to anger first. And anger is a complex emotion, and a lot of times it's rooted in hurt feelings or embarrassment, or they made you feel another type of way. And so your reaction is anger. And so it just allowed me to really process what I was feeling, acknowledging what I was feeling. Um, I know that therapy is not accessible to everybody. And everybody is not ready to go to therapy, but therapy also helped me to talk through a lot of those things. And I think for me, I know how I felt, but explaining it to someone else and being validated and them saying to me, like, yes, that is right. You are 100% correct in the way that you're feeling. It's completely okay. And also, you probably felt this way too. So they're also adding to the complexity and the layers of the emotions that I'm feeling. So therapy also helps. um I'm also, so that's the practical side to me. So the practical side is doing something because I know that a specific result is going to happen because of it. So journaling is getting it out. Going to therapy is getting it out. And then, therapists are trained. They're very knowledgeable. And to me, that's safety in that, because I'm like, okay, this person really knows what they're talking about. And they give me, so the logical side of my brain is satisfied. Like, I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. But then there's the spiritual side, and I'm a believer, and I believe that God is concerned about everything that I'm concerned about, no matter how small or minor it may seem to someone. God cares about that. And so I would pray about it, because forgiveness is hard. It's a process, it's layered. And so I need God's help. Like, I can't do it on my own, especially when it comes to something so deep as, like, I don't like the person that I've become, and I'm blaming it on two specific people. So that's a lot to take on. That's a lot to work through. And I needed God to really help me sift through those emotions. Um, and then, as a kind of a last step, you really have to live it out. It's an action. Um, because of the process of forgiveness, I said I forgive them. I worked through the steps of forgiveness. Sometimes I may not have felt that everything was gone, but I made myself still interact with them in ways that displayed that I had already forgiven them, if that makes sense. So, I still called them. I still hung out with them. I still, made sure that, my daughter had a relationship with them, or has and still has a relationship with them. And because of that, our relationships with both of my parents, they are at a point that I've always dreamed about. Like, I've always wished that I've had, how do I explain it? So as a kid, I always wished that I had a very specific type of relationship with my parents. Like, we would do these things, we would talk about these things, we would spend this amount of time together. And I have that now. And I know that it's because I had to let a lot of the nonsense go, and a lot of the unforgiveness, the resentment, the bitterness. I had to let that stuff go. And I talk to my parents all the time. We talk about so many different things. They've added to my life in so many beautiful ways, even as an adult. Like, I'm just so thankful. And I know that if I hadn't forgiven them, that our relationship wouldn't be the way that it is. And so if I can forgive my parents, I feel like I can forgive anybody. And by no means am I minimizing your hurt or the things that you've experienced, because I know people are cruel, and people have done, and we as humans have just endured some really horrible things. And so I'm not minimizing what you've gone through, but it doesn't matter what you've gone through. You still can, you can still forgive, because again, it's not about the other person. Just because you forgive them is not letting them off the hook. It's not saying what they did was okay, but it's really to benefit you. So I have a therapist, and then my pastor. So at different times, they said the same thing to me about forgiveness. And it's a quote that says, forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person. I'm sorry. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Think about that. So it really has nothing to do with them. When you have a heart of unforgiveness, it's only hurting you. And if you do the research, and I'll leave some resources so that you can explore it a little bit more, but there are emotional and spiritual implications for unforgiveness. And there are also physical things that go on. Like, your physical body cannot be as healthy and as whole as it should be because of unforgiveness. Like, there's research that can validate this. So it's really, it's a lot. It's complex. Again, it's layered. It's difficult. It takes a long time in certain cases, but you will absolutely benefit from forgiveness. So just as a charge, do an inventory. Think about people or situations that may happen that are lingering. Like, when you hear a person's name and you're like, ugh, or you make a face, or you feel icky inside when you hear their name or when you see their face, that might be a sign that you might need to forgive them. There may be something that they've done to you that you need to let go. So I encourage you to forgive, no matter how hard it might be. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. So that is our spiel on forgiveness. And so let's get into the third segment, which is the beauty secret. So this segment is a segment that talks about either a product or a beauty tip that not only, so it doesn't have to be an external beauty secret. It could be an internal beauty secret. It just depends on the week and what's going on in my life in terms of which one we'll cover. But this week we'll do both again because I like external beauty. We all do, right? Even though the podcast is really focused on internal beauty. So let's talk about exfoliation real quick. There are probably a million products on the market for exfoliating your skin. The benefits of exfoliating your skin is really like buffing away those dead skin cells so that your skin can be glowy and clear and smooth and all of those things. One of the things that I recently found out, well, maybe like a year and a half ago, was the difference between mechanical and chemical exfoliation. So mechanical exfoliation is, those products that are gritty and textured and they kind of buff away the dead skin cells. So, like your sugar scrubs and all of those types of products, those are mechanical. That's mechanical exfoliation. Chemical exfoliation is actually, and I didn't know this, chemical exfoliation is actually better for your face because mechanical exfoliation, because of the products that they use. So a lot of times it's like ground up material. So it could have sharp edges. It could be rough. So it could cause micro tears in your skin. And so if there's a micro tear or any type of irritation, that can lead to inflammation, and then that can lead to hyperpigmentation, and we don't want that. So if you are, just consider using a chemical exfoliant on your face, or you can use, so I actually have two options. So a chemical exfoliant is this one is from Paula's Choice. It's Skin Perfecting 2% BHA liquid exfoliant. It has salicylic acid in it. So if you have acne prone skin, this can combat breakouts, or if you have an existing breakout, it can shorten the length of the breakout. But this is a chemical exfoliant. I actually have been using this for probably almost 2 years at this point. I started off with the trial size version just to make sure it was something that I liked, and I really do like it. There are tons of reviews online that you can read through and a lot of videos on it as well. I don't use it as directed. It says to use it once or twice a day, but I just think that's a bit much. So I probably use this twice or 3 times a week, and I only use it at nighttime. I just think using something like this on your face every day is way too harsh. So if you're looking for a chemical exfoliant, I would suggest trying this one. It is a little pricey, but the bottle does last a long time. So read the reviews and see if it's something that works for you. And then this is this is still considered mechanical exfoliation, I guess, because this is a little silicone pad with very soft bristles. So if you don't want to use chemical exfoliation, you could use something like this because it kind of helps because it's textured, it can help kind of buff away the dead skin without being too harsh on your face. So again, anything that has those little gritty pieces in it, that could be a lot for your skin. And so you don't want to cause any damage to your skin. So this came from Walmart. It came in a pack of 2. It was probably like 3 something for the whole pack. And so when I am using my cleanser, I kind of just go in with this in circular motions, and it, helps to get obviously any dirt or anything that's on your face that doesn't need to be there. So yeah, these are just 2 suggestions that I have. And then for the inner beauty secret, because I was talking about like things that happened in my childhood, I wanted to talk about inner child work. So I am not a mental health therapist or anything of the sort. I just am very interested in these topics. So if you are inner child work, I would say is something that you need to do under the care of someone who is a professional. But there are kind of some high level, lighter ways that you can kind of dive in. Well, not dive, kind of like dip your toe into inner child work that will really benefit you. So something that I've been doing is watching movies that I used to watch as a kid. Just to bring back memories of a much simpler time when it wasn't, I didn't have to pay bills. I didn't have to be a parent. I could just be. And so I've been watching old movies. So one of the movies that I watched was Little Shop of Horrors. So I love musicals. Still to this day, The Wiz is my favorite movie. But me and my brother used to watch Little Shop of Horrors all the time. And so I hadn't watched the movie probably in over 20 years, but I went back and watched that. I went back and watched Mannequin. I tried to watch Gremlins, but that movie is kind of evil. I can't believe I used to watch that as a kid. So, but yeah, when you go back to, those simpler times when you were smaller or when you were younger, it kind of helps you start the healing process because it kind of takes you back to those times so that you can heal those places, and it'll impact you as an adult. So I may not have explained that very well, but sorry, y'all. Inner child work is definitely something that heals trauma. But again, you need a therapist or a professional to work through those things. But also, there are so many resources online. I'll try to link some so that you can just start to understand, if you don't already, how it can be helpful to you. So that is the beauty secret. And that means we have made it to the end of the episode. If you made it to the end, thank you. I really appreciate you. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions or stories, or you want to connect, you can send me an email at favorinbeautypod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you receive your podcasts. What's up, y'all? It's Editing Jenaé, and I have no idea what happened to the rest of the episode, but she's gone. So I decided just to leave it like this because I record and edit this myself, and I'm really trying to figure this all out. So I hope you all don't mind. As I was saying, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, like the video. And if you haven't heard it today, I love you. I appreciate you for listening. Take care and stay beautiful. Bye, y'all.